We are moving on to our third and final rock group, the metamorphic rocks. This is a brief introduction to metamorphic minerals because I think understanding how the minerals change is important to understanding how metamorphic rocks form in the first place. These pictures here show some key characteristics of metamorphic rocks, and that is something called foliation. Foliation is best shown in this right-hand figure here, where felsic minerals, light-colored, silica-rich minerals, separate from dark-colored mafic minerals by these processes that metamorphose the rock overall. And so you get these separations of felsic and mafic bands. You can see them in these large size outcrops here and here. And so foliation is a characteristic of metamorphic rocks. And then many times, metamorphic rocks also experience intense pressure, which folds the rocks. And so sometimes those bands of foliation are folded. Here they're folded at a small scale. Here they're folded at a rather large scale. Here's some water down here for scale. And here as well, this is a mountain-sized fold. But that said, not all metamorphic rocks are foliated. Here's a marble. It's a metamorphic rock. It's what happens when limestone becomes metamorphosed, and it is not foliated. So it's not always the case. Here are the learning outcomes for Unit 9A, so go ahead and pause the video and write these down. So metamorphism is a change that a rock experiences in its mineralogy as well as its texture. And it's usually associated with both pressure and temperature changes, although sometimes it could just be one of the two. Here's a little cartoon showing minerals before and after metamorphism. So in the before picture, we have some minerals represented by these three colors. The red is garnet, the black is hornblende, and the color that matches the background is plagioclase. After metamorphism, those minerals are gone, and now we have metamorphic minerals, chlorite, actinolite, and epidote. Sometimes we get a new mineral that has the exact same chemical formula as the old mineral. For example, andalusite, kyanite, which is shown here, and sillimanite are three minerals that progress from low-grade to high-grade metamorphic conditions, but they're all the same exact chemical formula. The difference is the structure of those atoms, the arrangement of them in their crystal structure. In the previous example, these do not have the exact same chemical formula. The atoms have been rearranged. What's very important is that these changes occur without melting. Metamorphism does not involve melting. Remember that. If you melt the rock, you are back to magma. And the next thing that you're going to get when you think about the rock cycle is igneous rocks. You cannot melt a rock and make it metamorphic. Once you melt it, it goes back to igneous. And so what happens when metamorphic reactions occur is something we call solid state reactions. Everything remains solid. Now in some cases they get very close to becoming fluid, but in metamorphism things remain solid. So here's an example from this cartoon of how mineral B is replacing mineral A molecule by molecule. So here's mineral A and here's mineral B. And over time, mineral B grows at the expense of mineral A. So you can think of it as swapping out atoms bit by bit, and mineral B is growing. And maybe at the end of this entire process, there might be little remnants of mineral A left behind that tell us that mineral B replaced mineral A. This is called recrystallization, and in most cases, new minerals are formed by this process. Here's a cartoon that has a little bit more going on than what I've just shown you. Here we have minerals A, B, and C before metamorphism, and afterwards we have A, D, E, F. So B and C recrystallized to form D, E, and F, but A remained. So not all minerals necessarily disappear and recrystallize. Recrystallization rarely involves a single mineral. It generally involves a host of minerals that form in the new pressure temperature conditions, and that's what's called an assemblage. So the D, E, F minerals represent a particular mineral assemblage. As I mentioned with mineral A in the previous slide, sometimes the minerals remain, sometimes they actually can change their shape and size. So in this example here, we have a white mineral that remains before and after metamorphism. The other ones change, but it did change its shape and its size. So we've recrystallized the red, green, and blue to become purple, yellow, and gray, but the white mineral has changed. And you'll notice that the minerals are aligned in a particular direction here, and that is the foliation I was talking about earlier. An exception to the rule is when we have compositionally simple sedimentary rocks, such as quartz, sandstone, or limestone. They don't change much with metamorphism because their chemistry is too simple. It's like if you have a bunch of ingredients to make a cake. You have eggs and flour and sugar and vanilla and cocoa and all kinds of other things, nuts and candies. Then you can make lots of different kinds of cake. But if all you have is butter and sugar, then all you can make pretty much is whatever butter and sugar make, right? Like a frosting. So if you only have a sandstone that has quartz in it, if you don't have any aluminum or potassium or sodium, then you can't really make new metamorphic minerals if all you have is silicon and oxygen. Same with calcite. If all you have is calcium carbonate and oxygen, you can't make a lot of new different minerals. So quartz remains quartz, calcite remains calcite. You can't make a lot of new things. And so these minerals, instead of recrystallizing, tend to just fuse together under metamorphic conditions. Sandstone becomes something called a quartzite. It's a metamorphic rock. There's no foliation. There's no separation of mafic and felsic minerals because it's all just quartz. Limestone, which is calcite, as I mentioned before, becomes marble. Now this marble does have some banding to it. There might have been some impurities in it. But basically, that is simply calcite fused together. On the other hand, shale rules. Shale makes all kinds of different minerals because shale, which was originally mud, has everything in it. Silicon, oxygen, aluminum, potassium, sodium, iron, magnesium, everything. And the more ingredients that you have, the more different minerals you can make. And so shale produces the greatest diversity of metamorphic rocks. Here are minerals that formed from a single shale rock. We start with chlorite, and as we increase metamorphic grade, which means we increase the heat and pressure, chlorite can turn into muscovite, which can turn into biotite, which can turn into garnet, and then kyanite, and then sillimanite. So each of these is a metamorphic mineral that represents a particular set of pressure temperature conditions during metamorphism. So just like with igneous rocks, certain minerals can only form under metamorphic conditions if you have the right ingredients. So the original mineral chemistry is very important. What rock did you start with? And then fluids that might be involved in the metamorphic process are also going to contribute. So if you have a chemistry that's rich in aluminum, you're going to produce chlorite, garnet, or kyanite. If you have fluids or a mineral chemistry rich in magnesium, you're going to get serpentine and tremolite. And if you have compositions rich in sodium, you'll get glaucophane. Now, all of these are the minerals you're looking at this week in lab, and so this discussion is pretty much connected to your lab. Finally, I'll leave you with this last diagram, which is showing how with increasing grade, and grade can be also thought of as temperature, but also pressure, you go from clay minerals. Remember I said shale is the beginning, or clay or shale are the beginning steps. And then you can see these minerals that represent increasing temperature and pressure conditions. And so we call them index minerals. They're kind of like the Mohs hardness minerals. They represent particular conditions of temperature and pressure, just like Mohs minerals indicated particular hardness values. So if you have a rock that has biotite and garnet in it, then you know that it reached these particular temperature and pressure conditions. Notice that feldspar and quartz remain throughout these temperature and pressure changes. Okay, so that was a little introduction on the mineral changes that occurred during metamorphic processes. You have 2 videos to watch next on what metamorphism is, where it occurs, and how to identify metamorphic rocks.